Parshas Vayeitze. It says like this: Vayashkem Yaakov baboker vayikach es ha'even asher som mirashoisov vayosem oisa matzeva. He set it up as a pillar, a monument. Matzeva. Vayitzoik shemen al roisho. He poured oil on its head. Now the idea of the matzeva, Yaakov himself explains it in the following psukim when he says, "Im yeh Elokim imodi ushmorani baderech hazeh asher anoichi hoylech v'nosan li lechem lechol uveged lilvosh v'shavti v'sholom el beis ovi v'hoya Hashem li le'Elokim." So then, v'haven hazois asher samti matzeva yeh beis Elokim, which means that he will be makriv karbonos on this matzeva, will be used as a mizbeach, as the Targum Onkelos says. And this will be the fulfillment of his vision. Ma noiro hamokoim hazeh ein zeh ki'im beis Elokim. As the Radak says on ein zeh ki'im beis Elokim, ein hamokoim hazeh ro'ui elo sheyiyeh bayis mekudosh le'Elokim lehispalel boi v'lizboyach boi zvachim le'Elokim. Oy pirushoi lo ro'isi hamara hazeh elo kedei she'esenu beis Elokim. In other words, he sees this as a hint that he is meant to make this into a beis Elokim, or that it is a makom ro'ui to be a beis Elokim, and that's the idea of the matzeva. In spite of the fact that Yaakov hinges it on im yeh Elokim imodi, nevertheless, he already has the bitochen that so it will be, and therefore he already sets aside this matzeva, and so that it should be a mizbeach on which he will be makriv karbonos when he comes back. However, the vayitzoik shemen al roisha, we don't know what that was for. The Rashbam says, Moshach oisol lekadesha, that this wasn't just that he poured oil, but he anointed the matzeva. It had a meaning of lekadesha, to sanctify it. Lahakriv aleha karbonos b'shuvay, in order that it should be ro'ui for the hakravas karbonos when he comes back. Kidiksiv b'mishkan v'keilav vayimshechem vayikadesh oisam v'chein vaychiach lefanenu. How do I know that in spite of the fact that the pasuk uses over here the term vayitzoik, which just means pouring, how do I know to interpret it in the sense of meshicha, which means a ritual anointment? Zok the Rashbam v'chein vaychiach lefanenu. Anoichi hokel beis kel Hashem moshachta shom matzeva. The Rebbeinu Shalom says to him, Anoichi hokel beis kel Hashem moshachta shom matzeva. And this moshachta shom matzeva, which says in Kapitel Lamed Aleph Pasuk Yud Gimel, is referring to what Yaakov did over here in the beginning of Parshas Vayeitze. So we know from that pasuk that this pasuk is not just a pouring, but it's a mashiach. It's a mashiach. It could be that the reason that over here it says Vayitzoik is because it was really still dependent on Im Yeh Elokim imodi. So if Chas v'Sholem, it wouldn't be Elokim imodi, it would just be a Vayitzoik. But the Rebbeinu Shalom already tells him that this is a Mashiach because the Rebbeinu Shalom knows that it will be Yeh Elokim imodi, and therefore he refers to this act as Mashachtali. In any case, the Rashbam says that this Yitzike is a Mashiach. However, the Ibn Ezra on the pasuk Vayitzoik shemen al roisha says Kidei sheyakirenu b'shuvah, that it was just a sign that he should remember where this matzeva, which rock he established as a matzeva. L'chore, it's a bit strange because not only that there are other ways to make a siman on the matzeva, this doesn't seem to be the best siman because the oil could be washed away. But the main thing that's shver is that the Ibn Ezra ignores the pasuk that appears later with regards to this pouring, and it says Hashem Moshachta Shomatzeva, which is Avada Mashma, like the Ramban, that this wasn't just a pouring to make a siman, but it was a Mashiach. So we need to understand why the Ibn Ezra refused to interpret the pasuk the way the Rashbam did. So I want to say that this Ibn Ezra is going with Shitosoi b'mokoim acher. And I'm going to roll it out like this. The further on in Parshas Vayishlach, when the V'shavti b'sholom el beis Avi actually happened, it says in Kapitel Lamed Hey, Pasuk Yud Dalet, Vayatzev Yaakov Matzeva, B'mokoim asher diber itoy, Matzevas even, Vayosech oleho nesech, Vayitzoik oleho shemen. Now, according to most Rishonim, this is a different Matzeva, not the one that appeared in the beginning of Parshas Vayeitze. However, the Ibn Ezra over there says that it's this Matzeva. He says, "Vayatzev Yaakov Matzeva pirushoy ukvar hitziv bepam orishoyno Matzeva." But one thing is clear, that the Vayitzoik oleho shemen that says over there is a new Vayitzoik oleho shemen. And nevertheless, since in our pasuk it says Vayitzoik shemen al roisho, and over there it says Vayitzoik oleho shemen, so avada we would assume that they have the same meaning. The Vayitzoik shemen al roisho in our parsha and the Vayitzoik shemen al roisho in Parshas Vayishlach l'chorah mean the same thing, even though it's a new Vayitzoik. Even according to the Rishonim that it's the same Matzeva. For sure, according to the Rishonim that it's two Matzeves. But we would say that the Vayitzoik in both places means the same thing. But it's interesting that the Targum Yonasan ben Azil in Parshas Vayishlach says Va'arak alei meshach zeisa. He poured on it shemen zayis. Whereas in our pasuk in the beginning of Parshas Vayeitze, he says Va'arak meshach al reishe. He just says he poured oil, but he doesn't say that it was olive oil. L'chorah, why? In both psukim it just says shemen. So why is it that in that pasuk he says that it's shemen zayis, and in this pasuk he says shemen stam, and he doesn't say that it's shemen zayis? So what we can suggest is like this. In the beginning of Parshas Vayishlach, it says, "Ki b'makli ovarti es hayarden hazeh." B'makli ovarti. Nu Rashi says that he only had his staff, he only had his makim, he only had his cane. So where did he have oil to pour onto the matzeva? So it might be that this is really why the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer and Perik Lamed Hey says, "V'yorad loy shemen min hashamayim v'yotzak olel." That this was shemen that came b'derech nes min hashamayim. He didn't have anything. So it could be that therefore the Targum Yonasan ben Azil does not want to say on our pasuk Vayitzoik shemen meshach zeisa, because even though typically oil is olive oil, but this oil was shemen min hashamayim, so it's not olive oil. But now we need to be done. We need to be done if shemen min hashamayim, which is not olive oil, is it bechlal? Does it qualify for Mashiach? Does it qualify for Mashiach? Now, in Menachos Daf Samach Tesam at Beis, there's a Gemara, Boyer Ebzeire Chitin Sheyordu Ba'ovim Mahu. What is the halachic status of Chitim that came down with the clouds? Zog the Gemara Lamai, Lagabi, what do you want to know? See, Ila Menachos, if it's for the purpose of bringing Menachos, Amailoi, what's wrong with these Chitim Sheyordu Min Hashemayim? Elo L'shtei Alechem. Must be that the shaila is legabe shtei alechem. My mimosh vayseichem amar rachmon elafuki dechutz la'aretz. It says by shtei alechem that you have to bring it mimosh vayseichem. Now the question is, Mimosh Vayeitze is la'afuke the chutz la'aretz, and the chitim that come from the clouds are not Eretz Yisrael and not chutz la'aretz. So if we say Mimosh Vayeitze is only la'afuke the chutz la'aretz, then these chitim would be kosher for menachos, for shtei alechem. But or we should say oidilme Mimosh Vayeitze davke v'afilu the avim loy, that you need chitim of Eretz Yisrael, and chitim sheyordu b'avim is not chitim of Eretz Yisrael. So what is chitim sheyordu ba'avim? What is that? Rashi says, sheyordu ba'avim im hamotor, they came down with the rain. Kisheshosu ha'avim b'ukionus, the clouds drank, so to speak, in the ocean. And bolu sfina maleya chitim, the clouds swallowed sfina maleya chitim, and then they dropped the chitim from the clouds, and that's the chitim sheyordu ba'avim. So Tosfos asks, "V'koshel Rabbeinu Tam, the imi chutz la'aretz." I mean, where was that sfina? Where was that sfina that was picked up? Where was it picked up? Was it chitim of chutz la'aretz? So v'chihutru l'shtei alechem b'shvil shehoyu ba'avim. What's the tzad to say that it becomes kosher because it went up to the clouds and then it came back down? And if these chitim were Eretz Yisrael chitim, no, is there any reason to say that they should become aser because they were in the clouds? And therefore the Rabbeinu Tam says, Ela nirali, the al yedei nes yordu ba'avim v'chihanu at mahosa, the Perek Dalad Mises. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin that talks about pieces of meat that fell from heaven. And this is al yedei nes, chitim came down from the clouds. These are not chitim that grew on the ground. These are chitim that came down from the clouds al yedei nes. That's what Tosfos says. And therefore these chitim are not Eretz Yisrael dike and not chutz la'aretz dike. And therefore our shaila is Mimosh Vayeitze dafke beinen, or Mimosh Vayeitze is only la'afuke the chutz la'aretz. So we see that the Rabbeinu Tam holds that chitim of nes, chitim that were created by a miracle, are considered chitim, and they're kosher for menachos. And the Gemara only has a question if they're kosher for shtei alechem or they're puzzle for shtei alechem, because we're mesupik if Mimosh Vayeitze is a requirement of Eretz Yisrael dike chitim, or it's not a requirement of Eretz Yisrael dike chitim. But for sure they are chitim, as the Gemara says that for menachos they have other kosher, in spite of the fact that they were created in heaven and they didn't grow on earth. Okay, and so I heard from my Rebbe Rebel Soloveitchik when we learned this Tosfos, he said that you see from Tosfos that chitim shel nes have a din chitim, and what the Welt says in the name of Reb Chaim that shemen shel nes doesn't have a din shemen, and the legabe the Beis Yosef's kasha on Chanukah, he said that Reb Chaim never said it, and that's what he said. So but l'chora Rashi, who was nidchak to say that we're talking about chitim that were swallowed by the avim from a ship that was carrying chitim, and he didn't want to learn like Tosfos. It would seem that Rashi might hold that chitim shel nes would bechlal not be considered chitim, and that's why he learned the Gemara in a way that we're talking about chitim that grew on earth. But often that I say that when the Rashbam said that Vayeitze shemen al Rosho was a kiyum of the din meshicha of Mizbeach, the Rashbam is only true, can only be said according to Shitas HaTosfos, that chitim shel nes have a shem chitim, so also shemen shel nes has a shem shemen, and therefore it qualified for meshicha, because this was shemen shel nes, as it says in the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, that it was shemen sheyorad loy min hashamayim. But according to Rashi, this wouldn't be shemen, and you couldn't be mekayim the din meshicha. Now, in the Ibn Ezra in Parshas Boy, Yud Beis Yud Dalet, he has a big arichas that not only that in Pesach Mitzrayim there wasn't yet a mitzvah of matzah, as the Ran also holds in other Rishonim in Parshas Arvei Psoch, in Perek Arvei Psochim. He says in the whole tkufa that Eden were in the midbar, they did not eat matzah. Because he says, Ki loy hoyo lohem lechem. Rak shomru chag ha-pesach levadei kasher osu b'Mitzrayim. So the Ibn Ezra says, obviously, loy hoyo lohem lechem, he holds that the mon did not have a shem lechem. And therefore, they could not be mekayim mitzvahs matzah during the time that they were in the midbar and they were eating mon. So we see that the Ibn Ezra assumes as a davar aposhit that chitim shel nes, because we know that one could have thought whatever thoughts he wanted in terms of the timing, and it could be time mamoshe if it's stated in the Gemara dafai and hey and yume. We see that the Ibn Ezra holds that chitim shel nes is not chitim, and therefore he says they couldn't be mekayim the mitzvah of matzah during all the 40 years that they were in the midbar. According to the Rabbeinu Tam, that chitim shel nes are chitim and the kosher l'menachos, so adin lechem and hashamayim would be considered lechem for mitzvahs matzah. So it would seem that the Ibn Ezra in Parshas Boy sides with Shitas Rashi and Menachos, that seems to be arguing with the Rabbeinu Tam and seems to hold that chitim shel nes is not considered chitim, and therefore the Ibn Ezra l'shit osoi couldn't learn the Vayeitze shemen al roisho to mean that it was a yitzika in the sense of mishichoson mekachoson, because according to him, shemen sheyored min hashamayim is not considered shemen. The Rashbam that learns that it was a yitzika midin meshicha, he held like the Rabbeinu Tam that what's created al yedei nes is considered that thing legabe all the halachas that are negeh to it, and therefore he held that we could learn Vayeitze shemen al roisha in the sense of Meshichos mekachosa. Now in Sanhedrin Daf Nun Tes Amid Aleph we have a Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Adam Harishon Lo Yehuta Lo Basar Lachila. Adam Harishon was not allowed to eat basar. Diksiv Lochem Yiyeh Lo Ochlo U Lechol Chayas Haaretz, which is the Peres and the Yerokas. Aber V'Lo Chayas Haaretz Lochem. The Chayas Haaretz Lochem is not mutter. Lochem Yiyeh Lo Ochlo U Lechol Chayas Haaretz. V'Lo Chayas Haaretz Lochem. So Adam Harishon Lo Yehuta Lo Basar Lachila. Meisavei Hoyer Reb Yehuda ben Teima Oime Adam Harishon Meisav Began Eden Hoyo V'Hoyu Malachei Ashores Soilin Loi Basar Umesanin Loi Yayin. So we see that Adam Harishon was eating basar. And for the Gemara Hasam be Basar Hayored Min Hashamayim. That wasn't real basar. The Malachi Ashores with Soilin Loi Basar, that was Basar Hayored Min Hashamayim. So it's mefurish over here like Rashi and the Ibn Ezra, that Basar Shalnes is not considered basar, and therefore Malachi Ashores with Soilin Loi Basar, in spite of the fact that Loi Huta Loi Basar Lachila. So we need to understand how is the Rabbeinu Tam going to deal with this Gemara. The Rabbeinu Tam who holds that chitim shel nes are considered chitim. L'chayra also basar shel nes is considered basar. So what's the Gemara's teretz? Hasam bebasar sheyored min hashamayim. So you know the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim in the beginning of Perek Tes says al shisha dvarim nitztava Adam Harishon. Adam Harishon was nitztava only 6 mitzvahs. Hoisif lenoyach evem and achai nimtzu sheva mitzvahs. So the Rambam says that evem and achai is not one of the 7 that were given to Adam Harishon. Evem and achai was only given to Noach. Because if Mishnah asks in Perik Dalet Mises and Daf Vavam with Beis and Sanhedrin, we darshan all the 7 mitzvahs from the pasuk Vayitzav Hashem Elokim ala Adam Leimer, and that the Issa Evim and Achai, which is one of the things we darshan from that pasuk Vayitzav Hashem Elokim ala Adam Leimer, which says by the Azhara of the Eitz Hadas, that Adam Harishon was nitztave al Evim and Achai. So says the Kesef Mishnah that according to Rav Yehuda Amar Rav that says that Adam Harishon loy hutar loy basar lachila, you can't say that Adam Harishon was nitztave al evim and achai because he wasn't allowed to eat meat bechlal. So therefore the Rambam held that this drosha of Vayitzav Hashem Elokim ala Adam Leimer is an asmachta ba'alma v'loy shavkinon divrei Rav Yehuda Amar Rav mikoyach hachasmachta. Says the Kesef Mishnah that the Rambam was doiche asmachta that puts the Issa Eva Menachai in the pasuk that's being said to Adam Arishan, because since we accept Rav Yehuda Amarav's statement that Adam Arishan was not allowed to eat meat b'chlal, it's impossible to say that Adam Arishan was nitztave on Eva Menachai. Be'emes, this question, really Tosfos already raises. Tosfos over there in Sanhedrin asks, how could it be that Vayetzav Hashem Elokim ala Adam Leimor includes the Issa of Eva Menachai? Adam Arishan was not allowed to eat basa b'chlal. And Tosfos answers, V'hodam rinin l'kamon, the loyhutar la'adam Arishan basa la'achila, hainu lahamis v'lecha, aval mesa me'eleha sharyeh, v'asa la'afuka the Eva Menachai, afil enough me'elavos. So Tosfos says that it's not a steer. Adam Arishan wasn't allowed to eat basa, but that's only lahamis kedei lechel was us. But if it died, it was mutter. And if the Eva fell off by itself, minachai, he would be mutter to eat it. That's the Isser of Eva minachai. Memelo Adam Rishon was given the Isser of Eva minachai. Lefizeh, I would say that Rashi and Tosfos and Menachos that have an argument in chitim that were created al yidei nes, if it's considered chitim, is really dependent on a machlokes that they have in the Isser of Achilas Basar of Adam Arishan. Rashi holds in Sanhedrin, the man shows that Rashi holds that Mesa Me'eleh was also included in the Isser of Basar, the Adam Arishan. So according to him, when the Gemara answers, Shani Osam, the Basar Hayored Min HaShamayim, it must mean that what was created by a miracle is not considered Basar. But according to Tosfos that holds that the Isser Basar was only Lahamis Kedei Lecha, so Avad the Basar Sheyored Min HaShamayim, he didn't kill that. It doesn't prove that Basar Sheyored Min HaShamayim is not considered Basar. The Amos is that the Rabbeinu Yoina says that the Gemara could have answered that he didn't kill the behemoth, but it's a Genai that he should eat a nevela that died by itself. Therefore, the Gemara says that it was Basar Sheyored Min HaShamayim. But really, the real answer is that there was no Hamasa Kedei Lecha. The heter is not because it's miraculous meat. The heter is because it's a behemoth that he didn't kill. And Memela, according to Tosfos, you don't see from this Gemara that what was created by a miracle is not meat. What was created by a miracle is meat. But according to Rashi, it's muchach from this Gemara that what's created by a miracle is not meat. And therefore Rashi in Menachos had to say that the chitim sheyordu ba'avim are chitim that actually grew on the ground. It's just that they were picked up by the oven. Now Tosfos, the Ibn Ezra in Parshas Bereshis, Aleph Chavtes, on the pasuk Vayomer Elokim Hine Nosati Lochem Kol Esav, says Hitir Livnei Adam Ulechol Sheyesh Bei Nefesh Chayo Lechol Kol Esav, V'Chol Pri Eitz Mutal Adam, V'Esav V'Ayerek Lechayis V'Chol Roimes V'Ad Koi Loi Hutar Abosar Ad Achar Amabu. So Avada, the Pashtus is that the Ibn Ezra holds that not only was it also for Adam Arishan to kill for the purpose of eating, but Loi Hutar Basar, period. That any basar was also. So Mamela, if he holds that any basar was also, he had to learn in the Gemara in Sanhedrin that basar hayored min hashamayim doesn't have a status of basar. And Mamela, he holds that Yidden did not eat matzah during the 40 years that they were in the Midbar. And therefore he holds that Vayitze Shemen al Roisha can't mean a Mashiach because Shemen Shel Nes is not considered Shemen. It's not considered Shemen. Now, l'chara, if Rashi holds that what's created by a nes is not considered the thing, as we see that Rashi holds that chitim shel nes are not considered chitim, so l'chara would be muchach that Rashi should learn vayitzoik shemen al reisha like the Ibn Ezra, that it was just a simon, but it wasn't a mashiach. So on the pasuk vayitzoik shemen al reisha, Rashi doesn't explain anything, but in Kapitel Lamed Aleph pasuk Yud Gimel, where it says Anoichi hakel beis kel Hashem moshachta shom atzeva, Rashi says moshachta shom loshoin ribui ugdula kenimshach lemalchus. V'chein vayitzoik shemen al roisho liyos meshucha lemizbeach. So Rashi clearly says, like the Rashbam, that this was a Mashiach. Now this l'chor, it doesn't stem with Shitas Rashi that shemen shel neis, chitim shel neis is not considered, the shemen is not considered chitim. So how was he mekayim the Mashiach with shemen shel neis? So, it's not so clear that this shemen was shemen shel neis. It's true, it says in the Pirkei Rebelezer that this was shemen she'yord le'min hashamayim. But in the Paneach Rosa, on the pasuk Vayitzek shemen al roisha, it says v'kosher halo yalifaz ben Esav rodaf acharov v'gozal mimenu kol hasheloi mehechon notal im kein hashemen v'yashloim ad makloi nesheloi k'diksiv ki b'makli v'hu hoya cholul. The makel was hollow. Shehevi tamid imoy molei shemen shehoya lahadlik l'moy Torah. He always needed oil, so you should be able to learn, right? To light a candle. So lefizeh, so we're talking about real shemen, which is kosher for Mashiach's mizbeach. But avada, it's a stretch to say this in Rashi, who learns pshutei shel mikra, that he had in his makel shemen. But I think that Rashi really was never bothered by this question, because, in other words, the question is b'makli avarti is mashma nothing else. That's why the Pirkei Rebelezer says it was Yord Min HaShemayim. That's why the Paneach Rosa said, nothing else, but in that makel he had oil. But Rashi in the beginning of Parshas Vayishlach on the pasuk, ki b'makli avarti seyard, and says, Lo hoya imi loy kesef v'loy zohav v'loy mikne elo makli levadi. Rashi says it doesn't exclude everything. It excludes loy kesef v'loy zohav v'loy mikne elo makli levadi. So it doesn't exclude oil. He did have some basic necessities, and Memela Rashi didn't have to learn like the Pirkei Rebelezer that it came down in the Shemayim. He didn't have to learn like the Paneach Rosa. They had it in his makel, because Rashi says that this is only a miut. The b'makli is only a miut on kesef, zohav, and mikne. In any case, according to Shitas Rashi and those that follow in that Shita, that mitzvahs cannot be performed only with natural means and not with a chayfetz of nes. There's a message over here, because the Malachi Ashur said no hoitcha l'shamayim, and that request was refused. Torah is lav hashamayim, as Hashem Adonenu ma'adeh shimcha b'chol haaretz. So the Kvod Shamayim is mizgala dafke through us, that l'Mitzrayim yeradetem, and l'Paro hishta'abadetem, and Yetzirah yesh beinechem. So Avodas Hashem is miskayim dafke within the limits of nature. It's dafke our dealing with the reality of nature, the difficulties, the challenges. That's where Avodas Hashem is miskayim. And with the chayfetz that's created by miracle, that's not Hashem Adonenu ma'adeh shimcha b'chol haaretz. And we say that in Rishonim k'malachim anu k'vnei adam, in Rishonim k'vnei adam anu k'chamorim. So avada, the previous generations compared to our generation is like malachim compared to bnei adam, meaning and Chazal tell us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that malachim can't really do the job. So meaning that we, who are considered bnei adam, not malachim, dafke we that have greater limitations and greater challenges, that gives value to our avodah, just like a mitzvah that's performed within the constraints of nature is a mitzvah, and a mitzvah that's performed with nisim is not considered a mitzvah. Al derech zeh, the harder it is, the more difficult it is, the more the weaker our nature is. The mitzvah is always greater. Okay, Rabbi Sai, having said that, I wish you all a good Shabbos.